Hello beautiful friends, and welcome to today's video. My name is Catherine, and this is a knitting and making channel here where I share weekly about what it is that I am making. Very heavy knitting content. I am a crocheter and I do love to sew. I love ceramics and painting, and I always need to have my hands in something. And as I became a mother and really started homeschooling my children and becoming so much more of a leader in their lives, I learned about the importance of knitting and teaching children knitting. And that is how I got started in this land of all the yarn and all the things, all the beautiful things. And I'll have to share more about just the deep, profound impact that knitting has brought, just the richness that it has brought to my life. It's been really impactful. So I'll need to make some notes and make a video about that at some point. But today we're just kind of going through the standard knitting podcast style of a beautiful finished object. Well, I would say 97% finished. I still have some weaves or ends to weave in. I have some things I'm working on that I want to share with you, and then a few little projects that are on my mind that I thought would be fun to talk about, and a very special yarn to showcase and really share more with you about today. So I hope you are taking a moment for yourself. I hope that you're relaxed, taking a nice deep breath, and sometimes I have to remind myself that when I do sit down to knit, that is my self-care time. Sometimes I have a baby in my lap, or I'm nursing and trying to knit, but every time I pick up my knitting needles lately, I'm really trying to be so intentional that that is my self-care time. That is the time that I have to be in my own energy and really just in my own world and in my own thoughts and in my creativity and in my art. Let's start with the first and only, I guess, in this episode, finished object, which I've been leading up to, which is the Puuya sweater by Sari Nordlund. The pattern is by Sari Nordlund. The yarn is by Sonder Yarn. I did get a yarn kit, and I'm so happy that I did for my first stranded colorwork project, because I absolutely adore the colors that I chose for this sweater. The green, this beautiful mossy green, I believe is called Staycation. The gray is Offline, and the lavender, the little pop of lavender, is Mani Petty. I'm pretty sure that those are all of the color names, and this is a fingering weight 2-ply. I am so in love with this yarn. As I've said before, I do have plans to knit this pattern again in some different colorways, but the same yarn. That is not a high priority in my queue, but it is something that I do feel very pretty certain that I will take on again, probably in the winter. This is a great, cozy winter knit. Sort of lost my motivation for this one as it started. I cast it on March 1st, and then had a baby a few weeks later. And then it was starting to get kind of warm, and I wasn't quite as motivated to be picking up the sweater and knitting it, but she's done, and she is so cute, and we've got a few little ends to weave in. And I wanted to get a picture of this and a new pair of pants from Christy Dawn that just arrived this week. And honestly, it is absolute heat wave where we are, and we don't have air conditioning in this really cute little cottage bungalow, like very small little place that we're staying. And it's wonderful. It's right at the base of a mountain, but there's no air conditioning, and it's been over 100 degrees the past 2 days, and it will be again today. And putting this on with a new pair of slacks and taking pictures just does not light me up and bring joy to me right now. So it's not going to happen, but maybe in future episodes, or if you want to follow my Instagram, I will get photos eventually, and I'll put them up on Ravelry and all the cute things and how I like to style it. And I'm so excited for that, but it is just not that week. So you'll have to stay tuned or subscribe, and I'm sure I will be talking more about this piece because I'm just so proud of it. There are ways that I know I could improve with the way I was holding my yarn for the color work. So that is part of my motivation for wanting to knit a second edition of this in very different colorways. Now, because of the fingering weight yarn, it actually isn't as thick as it looks. Like, it's actually pretty drapey, and when I did I popped it on very fast when I was done blocking it, and it's not as immediately like hot as you might imagine, it kind of surprised me. Now, I do think, I don't remember, but you can kind of see here's the body of my sweater and then the sleeve. And I think that I knit the sleeves at just a slightly bigger needle size than the body. I think that may have happened on accident. I did not take great notes on that project because it was just right in the midst of giving birth, and I couldn't remember what needle I used for the body, and then I didn't know if I went off of the pattern, and then so it calls for 3.5 millimeter needles for the body. I may have used that, but then we went on this trip and my 3.5 millimeter needles are nowhere to be found in my little kit. So I did 3.75 for the sleeves, and I'm not mad about it. But there's a few little things like that in this sweater, and it is cropped. And I think for my next version, I might enjoy having one that is just a bit longer. Just a few things that, I think could be improved. I think that happens at the end of most of our projects, or at least for me it does, where there's, I'm kind of taking mental notes of, I want to knit that again, and this is what I would do differently. I see myself being a person who knits multiples, kind of finds those few patterns that I really enjoy, and I like the idea of knitting multiples, and I like the idea of memorizing knitting patterns. Not something like this, of course, but some, basic sock patterns or tank tops and t-shirts. Now, I've been saying for a little bit that as soon as this was off the needles and blocked and done, still need to weave in the ends, I was going to cast on a new sweater. I think I'm always, at least for the next, I don't know how long, it's just always so nice to have a sweater on the needles for me. There's something so comforting about that and really giving to myself. And the next sweater that I cast on is the BRUME sweater by Andrea Mowry. And she released this pattern. Something about this, when she released this, really struck a chord with me. And I love following her, and she's releasing new things all the time. And this was the first one, though, of her patterns that really grabbed my attention. And it was right before my birthday when she released the BRUME pattern, but then she also, as she released it, there was a discount on the pattern and also a discount on yarn kits from Farmer Daughter Fibers. Yeah, farmerdaughterfibers.com. I just pulled out the tag to look, and I have heard so much about this yarn company, and it was always one that I was just I'd always just sort of peek through their website and take a look around. And you know what? It was my birthday was coming up, and I just had a baby, and it was like, it's time for some treat yourself yarn from this amazing yarn company. And so I went ahead, and this is a splurge for sure. This is a treat yourself birthday present kind of a yarn, in my opinion. But I got the Oh DK alpaca, 90% alpaca, 10% silk. this is this is one of the yarns that she recommends for the pattern, and I'll link the episode where she really goes into depth about talking about her experience with this yarn. But I also wanted to add some of my notes as I've just cast on, and I just have a little bit going if you've been thinking about using this yarn, because it is so special. I couldn't be happier with it. And I was nervous when it arrived in the skeins, because it's like when it comes apart for the first time, it almost does that like webbing, sort of like, you know, that stuff that you can decorate your porch with at Halloween, that cobwebby stuff that like creates this like net as you pull it apart. That's what was happening with this yarn the first time that like when I was winding it up in the cakes. It was the most fascinating thing to watch. I've loved the fabric that is knitting up. So this yarn is just, I couldn't recommend it more. If you want this kind of look, this really cozy, super soft, but drapey, I think it's going to be very warm. I am accounting for about 10 inches of positive ease in the size that I chose. And I am so lit up by this project. The only thing is that we're in a heat wave right now, so knitting on this hasn't felt like a joy. I'll get to the projects that have felt like a joy, but I just got the ribbing done, and I did do a swatch before casting on. I really wanted to make sure that I really hit the nail on the head with my gauge. Now, but the thing is, I did knit my gauge. I knit, for the first time actually, I did a gauge in the round, which was kind of a fun project. It didn't take me too long, but I only did 2 inches in the row gauge, and actually did quite a lot in my stitch gauge, because when you're doing that swatch in the round, it's important because the stitches on the end won't be accurate. They're kind of loose. So I got a spot on gauge, at least with that much, with my 2 inches high, like 7 inches across or something like that, so that I could really see how I was doing. And it was pre-blocking, but I was spot on gauge. So I went ahead and cast on, and this is the neckline, which the kind of wide, it's not a cowl, I almost said cowl neck, but it's like a wide turtleneck, the way that it sort of sits up. It doesn't sit like this one. This is actually one of the modifications I will make when I make this one again, is making the neckline wider, adding more stitches to that, and then just not increasing as much with this one. So I will be making modifications, because this turtleneck, I do need to probably sew it down, but I just haven't been sure. Yeah, I'll probably sew it down. But this one's, you know, it's snug. This is like a real snug, really warm. No air is going to be, you know, getting down your back or on your chest. This is more my style, where it's that there's like some cozy drama. I don't know how else to say it. It's so cute. And it was one of the things about this pattern that I needed to try it. I needed to have it. So I still have maybe a few more inches to go on the collar, and it does fold down. It does fold down. And then the way I'm reading the pattern is that there's kind of a way that she has you attach the folded down edge sort of incorporated into your knitting. So I'm really excited to try this, because I do think this could be one of those patterns that you just want to knit over and over, and depending on the yarn that you choose, the length of the sweater, even doing like a 3/4, like really wide 3/4 sleeve or like elbow length sleeve, kind of like a wide sleeve, could be really, really gorgeous, and kind of airy. So not too hot. I'm just thrilled. It's just too hot to be knitting on this right now. So I don't know if I'll really make much progress. We do have, let's see, at the end of July, we're going to be traveling again, and we'll have a few pretty long car days, and I might pick this one up for that, but I need it to cool down a bit before I'm really, and I like to knit on things that I'm just truly, that it is exciting. I'm not gonna, I don't know, put any like artificial timelines on things like that sweater. So what has felt incredible to be working on is my Fay Summer Top, and I have made some progress, not quite as much. I mean, we had the 4th of July and the heat wave and no AC and 3 kids and all, you know, all the things. And this was one, as I shared last week, that was hard for me to sit down and work on unless everyone was in bed. Like I really needed a lot of mental energy to sort of find my rhythm with this one. Oops, and I'm in the middle of a row. Whoopsies. But I've made a bit of progress. I think I want to say maybe 12 rows or so since we last checked in. And, you know, my goal was 4 rows a day. And now that I've spent more time with the pattern, with the chart, I think that's going to be much easier for me. I started to find my groove yesterday. This is a woolfolk yarn called Straw. I think it's a DK gate, or yeah, DK. And it's very dry, very, very incredibly dry. Like it's so not this, like you hold this and it's just this like, I don't know where this word just came from, but like custardy. Like it's just like smooth, buttery. That's what it is, buttery. Like yarn. And then this is very different. This is, well, it's kind of has like, imagine luxurious hay. I think it'll be fine against bare skin, I think, unless you start to get a little warm. But this is a pretty rustic one. Like if you are very skin sensitive and any sort of little prickles bothers you, I don't know about this one. I mean, we'll see. I need to wear it before I really give advice like that. But for summer knitting, absolutely wonderful. I was sitting on the porch yesterday watching the kids play with the hose, and baby's there with me, and I'm knitting away on this. And it was so hot, but I had no problem with this in my hands because it's so dry. And so it's a wonderful summer yarn. I've made a bit of progress, as you can see. I think I'm on row 31, so I'll have to make a note. We've got a little cable design starting, and the bobbles are coming together. I'm improving on my bobbles. This will not be a pattern I see myself repeating, actually. This is kind of one of those tops that I think you knit it once and you're good. And it was kind of a fun art project, like yeah, I mean, I'm learning a few new things in this. I did realize a few rows in, or a few rows ago, yesterday, as I was knitting on this, I was doing my purl through the back loop incorrectly. So you can sort of see this line right here. These are the knit through the back loop, purl through the back loop stitches. And it wasn't looking right. I was like, these look kind of sloppy, or something's off here. And so I looked up a tutorial on purl through the back loop. I was doing it wrong. So I got that fixed yesterday, and they're starting to come together and look much more uniform. So that's great. And I'm just loving the yarn for the season that it is. And who knows, maybe, I mean, I feel just very motivated to be knitting on that one right now, as well as a pair of socks for my husband, who who is actually working right now in Arizona. So it has been quite the time being on my own with these little babies that you maybe can hear playing the harmonica in the other room. And I am very ready for him to return. And I feel like knitting these socks is like oops, lost a stitch marker. It's like a love letter of sorts via sock knitting. I just think about him while I'm knitting these and how much he contributes to our family, and I miss him so much. And he'll be back in the middle of July, and I will have these done by then because I want to have a little gift for him when he gets here. But last night I finished the heel flap. By the way, the pattern is I think they're just called the vanilla socks on 9-inch circulars by the Crazy Sock Lady, one of the more popular sock knitting patterns that's out there. And I'm really enjoying it. It is just, I would love to have this pattern memorized over the next year. Just keep working at it, and what a fun thing to always have a little sock project going on. I just think I think socks and sweaters are just always going to need to be on my needles. As I was thinking about sock knitting and all the different projects I want to do, I was reminded of a story of, I was sitting knitting at one of my son's martial arts lessons, and I'm just sitting there and like knitting away, and there was a woman sitting next to me, and we started talking about knitting. She said my husband's mother was a knitter, and like a knitter, and she would ride the bus every day, and she would just sock knit. And, in her older years, that was just all she did. She just knit socks. And she said my husband was on the bus with her one day, and she's knitting her socks, and he looks around on the bus and notices that almost all the passengers he can see are wearing a pair of her hand knitted socks. So she would just knit these socks and give them away to people who probably, everyone in our life, but even the people who she was riding the bus with. And that image really stuck with me. I just love that. I love that story. There's just something different about sock knitting. There's just something a little bit different. I don't know. I can't quite explain it. It just feels very practical and generous, and I'm just really enjoying it. So last night I finished the heel flap on this little sock. And I'm not changing colors. I'm not doing anything crazy like that. This is crazy. I'm like getting wild with my sock knitting. This is Barocco vintage sock. It's like $9 for a big old ball of yarn. And yeah, it's coming together really well. I'm actually just really enjoying it. So I have some other yarns for socks that will be up next, and I want to knit my daughter a pair of socks. She's growing up so fast. It is the wildest thing. Now, she got this yarn a while ago for herself. She really wanted some fingerless gloves. I think socks would be I don't know, just something. I'd rather go the sock route, I think, because I want to practice this pattern. So I have 3 yarns here that I think would be fun, girly sock combinations. These 2 are what I'm leaning towards first, and there's not much here. This is like a mini skein. We have a second mini skein of this, but I think it was left at home. I don't think it got packed. I packed a lot of my yarn for this trip, and I thought it could be a fun either heel toe color, and then this is what's left over for the center part of from my 24 Birds shawl. And it just has just enough interest for my little girl, where it's not just a plain old white yarn. We've got some, speckles of fun in here, and some oranges. So I think that this would look cool, but there's also speckles of this like kind of magenta color too. Either way could go, but I don't have a ton of this, and I don't have my scale, so I don't know how many grams this is. And then this was gifted to me, and I don't think that, yeah, there's not a label in here. So feeling some really fun, colorful socks coming up after I finish my husband's socks. And then of course my boys will want socks. And then I'll need a pair of socks. So sock knitting is on, it's happening. And after all of those pairs of socks, I should have at least a pretty good grip on that vanilla sock pattern on 9-inch circulars. I really hope you're doing well. I hope you are staying cool. If you're in the United States, I think everywhere right now is just very, very warm. I always have a check-in with myself this time of year with like, okay, we're halfway through the calendar year. How am I feeling about, you know, what's been going on this year? And it's just been a very reflective time. I always feel like the beginning of July is a very reflective time. And then you get into August and September and sort of that back to school energy, and the seasons start to shift a little bit and there's like a new surge of energy. But at least for myself, I feel like it's been a very reflective time about what is going really well in life, where I want to make improvements, where I see improvements to be made. So, and my husband, you know, with him not being here, it's been an extra like quiet time, lots of quiet time for me, especially in the evenings and early mornings, just to be and sit. So I hope you're also having some just nice relaxing moments where you're able to drop in with yourself as well. Thank you all for being here. I hope to see you in the next video. I hope you subscribe if you watched all the way through. I appreciate that so much. That does really help what I'm trying to do here on YouTube and connect with other makers and mothers and knitters. And I just so appreciate you. I hope you are well, and I will see you in the next video.